Almost everything that we've been talking about has been in the world of online or digital security, with some exceptions about multi-factor authentication. And we need to look at the other side of it, and this other side is physical security, and that is securing actual physical assets, securing entry to buildings and into offices, and really only allowing authorized people to go into restricted areas. And physical security is an important counterpart to digital security and cybersecurity. And the reason for that is things like we've talked about social engineering and rogue access points and a few other aspects where being able to be in physical proximity to the source that is being attacked will result in greater likelihood that a attack is successful. And so physical security is not just a requirement for a bank or something like a government agency, but the access control between a authorized person and authorized person should be performed anywhere that digital security is also a concern. And so when we talk about access control, we really mean that there is some boundary, even if it's just a locked door, that there is some boundary between being able to get in somewhere and not able to get in. And sometimes in an office, that's really informally the receptionist or secretary who says, "Can I help you? Why are you here?" And the idea is that if somebody is not able to explain, then they would call security service or the police. So very often it's informal like that. But access control can also be turnstile. It can be a badge swiping system. It can be a combination of all these things. And of course, it can be complex. And there's also usually an element where not only are we restricting access, but we are also adding surveillance in the form of cameras, various recording equipment, perhaps even motion recording, and all of these things will create a track record of who has been coming in and out of a particular space and who's been performing what action. Very often, if you're working for a company, there's an expectation that you will be recorded, whether it's your phone calls or your movements about the public areas in the office are going to be on record and can be used if there is a security incident to trace back who might have been involved. And so you need to be aware that surveillance is something that is growing. And since it's easier and easier to, for example, record video using inexpensive cameras and then upload it to the cloud, that there's a very good chance that if you are in a office or you're in a public area, you will be under surveillance. And this, of course, has good and bad aspects that we're not going to get into all details of, but it's just something to be aware that for a lot of people, physical security today includes a lot of surveillance as an. And one of the reasons for surveillance is, of course, intrusion detection. And this can also take the form of many other devices and techniques. And some of them include motion detection, some of them include sound recording, not just video recording. Some of them will involve sensors of different sorts, like it might be temperature change sensors, it might be vibration sensors. There's a lot of technology out there. Some of it we know from things like spy movies, but some of it is very subtle. And once again, something I've been stressing on is with security, a combination of factors is what helps in the design of a successful security system. So, very often, the way that intrusion detection is monitored is also through multiple different types of devices and factors. And what people look for is just abnormality. So essentially, there needs to be a way to say this is a baseline, this is typical activity, and perhaps if somebody is coming into the office between 8 p.m. and 7 a.m., then that is recorded as intrusion. If they don't then disarm the alarms or disarm security systems, because that's not a normal time to be in an office. And that is cultural, of course, but The idea is that everybody who's in charge of a security system should know what the typical patterns and hours are for those that they are. And one of the things that we talked about a little bit with multi-factor is the use of biometrics. And biometrics can be used for physical security too, where physical access can be restricted based on fingerprint scans or eye scans, voice print scans, all the things that a person is capable of doing. And of course, the biometrics systems are not perfected yet. There are often some issues with recognizing a legitimate user and legitimate access holder. And suppose if there's a fingerprint reader and it's smudged, sometimes it has to be cleaned off multiple times before it can be used. But the idea is that if you combine biometrics with, suppose, just physical identification cards that a guard is looking at, then that can be a powerful factor because it's harder to copy somebody's biometric. It's easier to a fake identity card or to rely on compromised records of who works for a company or not, and also a way to beat some typical guard activities through social engineering, where somebody wears a fake uniform of some business and they act busy, so they're allowed in to perform maintenance when they're really coming in to perhaps install some key loggers on. And so biometrics will help to identify whether somebody is, they say they are. Another aspect of the whole physical security uh, activity is disaster protection. And disaster protection is talking about not the activities of any one person or group of people, but really what we call force majeure or acts of God. And so, for example, you have a data center, and the data center happens to be in a floodplain. And there's a flood, and now your data center has been flooded, and your systems are down. So, in a way, this is a physical attack that has had an effect on your digital presence, on your software systems working correctly. So it's not like you even had to get hacked. It just happened without any of that. And so the idea is that part of your physical security should be having disaster recovery plans so that when you do face a earthquake or fire or flood, any of the disasters that can happen to civilization, you are able to recover it by either having a second site with the same data already copied there, or you have a second data center that can be brought up, or just a second place for your people to get together and work on what it is they're working on. And so disaster protection is part of security, and of course, it's just part of what's also known as business continuity, which is being able to continue to do business even under circumstances. And another aspect of this is hacking physical security. So, hacking we think of as having unauthorized access to a system and being able to guess the password or find out the password and get into a system, use a vulnerability. But there's also an activity of hiring people to come in and just try to get into a building or an office or get into a particular room while using their tools and techniques without any insider knowledge or essentially acting like they are just a team of criminals. And the idea is that somebody gets hired to do this, and not everyone who is part of the response team, part of the security team, knows about it. And so this is kind of a red team, blue team exercise where red team tries to get in and blue team tries to stop them. And the idea is that sometimes blue team will know that these things are happening, but sometimes blue team actually consists of people who are just doing their daily job. And of course, if there's a use of deadly force that is part of somebody's security plan, then there needs to be some communication that a red team exercise is happening. But if it's non-lethal, if we're just talking about an office with, suppose, a security guard who's unarmed, and we're talking about there being some biometrics and some toll booths or turnstiles, then there is no need for advanced disclosure. But usually, at least somebody at the company should know that it's happening. And there is a number of consultancies who do this kind of work. It's interesting, and you can actually find out more about this online if this is something that you want to pursue. This is where the world of security branches out, and what we usually think of as ethical hackers can also do their work in the physical world by ethically hacking physical